A very good morning to all of you. I'm Leena Prasad. I don't have my other colleagues here who've been part of the secretary, but I would like to acknowledge their contribution, Adya, Kaul, and Saloni, and you'll meet them through the day. As you all know, this on behalf of the organizing committee, the steering committee, and the Delhi working group, I'd like to extend my heartiest welcome to all of you for joining us at the third BICON on evolving trends on alternative care for children in South Asia. This is the third international conference that we are organizing in the same hall. We did the first one in 2014 and the second one in 2016. Many of you were with us in the last two conferences, and we are hugely thankful to Amity University for this support. One announcement, please keep your phones, your mobiles on silent mode, please. Also, another announcement, there is a small card in your conference bags. That is meant for you to tell us which breakaway sessions you will be participating on day 1 and day 2. So please hand over the filled in with your choices, the cards to the registration desk by tea time today. That support is hugely needed. As the host, let me roll out the third BICON in the most traditional Indian way. Let us all together invoke the Almighty to dispel all darkness and bring lights and smiles in the lives of all children and youth. Now, I will call upon Dr. Modi, who's the Managing Trustee at Udayan Care, and the BICONs have been her baby. So I welcome Dr. Modi to I don't need to introduce Dr. Modi to any of you. I'll request her to welcome all of you.
Good morning. It gives me so much pleasure to stand here before you. Welcome each one of you in the room today. Distinguished Secretary Shri Rakesh Srivastavji from Ministry of Women and Child Development, the very knowledgeable and illustrious guests of honor, Ms. Kendra Gregson from UNICEF ROSA, and Ms. Yasmin Ali Haq, Country Representative, UNICEF India, Ms. Shireen Vakil from Tata Trusts, all international delegates from South Asian countries, and also delegates from UK, USA, Zambia, Switzerland, Australia, Bangkok, Germany, Netherlands, and from South Asian countries, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Nepal, and Bangladesh, and of course, from all over India. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Dr. Delia Pop from Hope and Homes for Children in UK, whose pioneering work in deinstitutionalization motivates us all. Shireen, please, are you there? Has she not come? Can you call, please? This is the third international biennial conference with focus on South Asia on alternative care for OHC, out of home care children. It was felt way back in 2014 that a platform especially for South Asian countries needed to be created to deliberate with greater breadth and depth on standards of care and mental health issues of children in alternative modes of care who are deprived of their own family network, and how trauma and abuse, whether being in a dysfunctional family or separated from a family network and landing up in alternative care mode, if not addressed, can impact on the mental health of children. It is heartening that the dialogue has continued, and now we are into our third BICON, discussing the policies and practices and the gaps which need to be plugged, and how these impact on the mental health of children, especially in the context of South Asian countries, and what can be done further to strengthen the families from disintegrating, and effective gatekeeping mechanisms to prevent unnecessary entry into alternative care. At the same time, improve the mechanisms and quality of life of such children who do need alternative care, so they grow into wholesome individuals. Deinstitutionalization, family strengthening, and alternative care are discourses that have gained international attention in recent years, as well as national attention in each of our South Asian countries. And these 2 days deliberation shall unfold many gaps in policies, practices, and needs, and break down the walls between myth and reality. The presentations and discourses shall review various barriers to effective prevention of family disintegration and intervention strategies, right from gatekeeping mechanisms to deinstitutionalization and improving standards in alternative care. We as individuals, we always have a core identity and a sense of stability and rootedness in our families, in our communities. But for the children who are OHC, out of home care, and in alternative care, for them, the identity is always shifting. With every new institution or family, a new identity is created and negotiated to the extent that they become twilight children and get an identity of being left behind or cared for. We are extremely fortunate to have a panel of very eminent and distinguished mental health professionals as our resource persons who would be examining the different modes of alternative care with the perspective of mental health, and who are committed to addressing the issues and mental well-being of OHC children. As practitioners in child and youth care, we are all aware of the dangers inherent in a stereotypical one-size-fits-all package of intervention to meet the needs of OHC children and troubled families. CYC has to be always dynamic and individual to the needs, culture, and context of the child and the youth. Here is an opportunity to learn about the alternative care systems and the latest updates around the world in general and more specifically in South Asia. The conference brings to the fore the pioneering efforts in different aspects of alternative care practices. There are keynotes on family strengthening, deinstitutionalization, modes of alternative care. Presenters, practitioners, and researchers in this space shall attempt to find out how different alternative modes of care can be enhanced and become a game changer, from being an undermining environment to the child to become an empowering platform where a child can heal, engage, and develop, despite the devastating impact of childhood trauma and shackled past. Build resilience and hope and connect to a positive future. This time, we have a mix of plenary and breakaway sessions to allow for wider participation from all involved and present. There are 3 themes for the breakaway, and your conference booklet talks about it. Please register your names like the MC told you. I must welcome all the young adults who are caregivers who have joined us today from Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and different parts of India. And we look forward to engaging with them in constructive and creative ways to enable them to become a collective voice. Over the last 6 years, the BICONs have also seen the growth of our academic journal, Institutionalized Children, Explorations and Beyond, which was first launched in 2014 BICON. I thank the editor-in-chief of ICIEB, Dr. Monisha Akhtar, for this, and wish to share with you that a copy of the 9th edition, a special issue on alternative care, is also in your bags. So do find time to look at it. Now, before I hand over, I need to do some thanks. Amity University, NCPCR, UNICEF, for consistently supporting us in organizing these BICONs. We are grateful to Tata Trust for taking up this cause and enabling us in this endeavor. This time, we have been supported hugely by Hope and Homes for Children UK. We are hugely grateful to all the sponsors and partners. Without their support, it would not have been possible to organize such an event. CRY, SOS Children's Villages, both Asia as well as India, truly, truly grateful to you. And there have been many others, SERI, Miracle Foundation. They have been our partners for the last so many years. Max Foundation, NHPC, NBCC, Vatica Group, Power Grid. These are some corporates who found value in working for children and sponsoring the event. And Lal Family Foundation. A huge word of appreciation for Delhi Working Group, which was initiated and rolled out by UNICEF, which met from time to time and developed clear-cut directions for the conference. Tanishta Datta, Vandana Kandhari, Inakshi Ganguly, Nicole Rangel, Sandhya Mishra, Richa Tyagi, Dr. Bharti Sharma, and my young friend Ian Anand. The steering committee, comprising of members from South Asian countries, played a big role in initiating a country process to garner participation and support for the BICON. Hiranthi Vijamani, Chathuri Jayasuriya, they organized multiple workshops and consultations around the BICON within their countries, and so did Sumni Matuladhar from Nepal. I extend my greatest gratitude to them. We also need to thank Fatima Runa from Maldives, Honorable Justice Iman Ali from Bangladesh, Umi Laila from Pakistan, who could not be here, but they helped us, by constantly joining us on Skype calls. First of all, and last but not the least, I need to thank Ms. Isabel Sahani and her team of volunteers. Where is Isabel? And her team of volunteers at Udayan Care Skill Center, who have created the wonderful conference bags, iCard pouches, pen drive covers and gifts by training and employing the disadvantaged women from nearby communities of Greater Noida. I'm really grateful to the galaxy of resource persons who have agreed to share their valuable time and expertise with all of us today and tomorrow. We are also very immensely grateful to all the participants who have come here as practitioners and researchers from child protection field, who I'm sure will actively participate in the breakaway sessions and enrich this dialogue. With what we will learn from presenters and moderators, and also from each other, from the youth who have grown up in the alternative care system, it will be, I promise, it will be most powerful and most invigorating. I promise we all will go back to our programs and our countries re-energized and refocused. So here is us wishing all of us a great conference. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Modi, for setting the tone for the conference. It's time now, friends, for the keynote address. I have to acknowledge here that Delia was the first confirmed speaker for the conference, and I'm thankful to her for this. It's been like 2 years back she had confirmed that yes, she'll do the keynote. Delia Pop, as you would all know, is currently the Director of Programs and Global Advocacy at Hope and Homes for Children in UK. You will find her detailed bio on page 21 of the souvenir, and I'll read it out for you quickly. Born and educated in Romania, Dr. Delia Pop is a medical doctor who has committed the last 17 years to working with children in the institutional care systems and families at risk of separation. She has transformed child protection and care systems at national and regional levels through developing a model of change and training materials to support global reforms and providing technical assistance and training to government agencies, NGOs, and other professionals in Europe and Africa. Dr. Pop is currently the Director of Programs and Global Advocacy at Hope and Homes for Children in the United Kingdom. Over to you, Delia.
Thank you. How are you today? You do? Good. It is an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here. And first and foremost, I would like to welcome everyone here. I would like to thank our amazing hosts and every single organization who participated in bringing this meeting and conference today and tomorrow. I have the very challenging mission to open the conference, and I have a very limited time. I have about 20 maybe 30 minutes, to give you a sort of an idea of where the field of deinstitutionalization, child protection, care, and reform is at global level. But before going into any technical details, I would like to tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing, what really motivates me. And for this, I need your participation. So how many people here have their own children? Raise a hand. How many people here have grandchildren? How many people here have nieces and nephews, friends with children? Perfect. Now, all of us, we've been children at one point in time. I would like you to picture in your minds a moment in your childhood and just close your eyes and think about an instance when you were scared, or you were hurt, or you were simply playing with another child and something happened and you were not that happy. And now think about what you did after that. And when an adult close to you, maybe your parent, your grandparent, your auntie, your uncle, an older sibling, immediately reacted and came and gave you a hug, just feel that. Now, this amazing feeling that you can't translate in words, it's what typical children experience when they are frightened, when they are hurt, when they need that kind of support. There is always an adult close, able to provide that feedback and that support. Children in institutions, children in orphanages, children who live without parental care, in environments where that kind of family setting cannot be replicated, do not experience this feeling that is absolutely extraordinary. This is what motivates me. I work for an organization called Hope and Homes for Children, and our work has been for 20 years in the field of deinstitutionalization and child protection and care reform. In very simple words, we are supporting children in orphanages and children who are at risk of separation to either return to families and communities or to be prevented from being separated from their loved ones. I worked with Hope and Homes for Children for 18 years, and before that I worked for the Romanian government in some of the first services that were piloted to show how institutional care can be replaced in a country that probably everybody heard of from a child protection perspective was a complete nightmare. Over 150,000 children in institutions across the country, no prevention, no alternative care system, just institutions, over 600. With our work and with contribution from UNICEF and many other organizations, Romania today has less than 6,000 children. 6,000 children left in institutions, and the Romanian government made a renewed commitment to see all the children transition safely into families and communities. My organization has the experience of working across 35 countries in Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, Central Asia, East and Southern Africa, more recently in Latin America, and very, very recently a growing understanding of the context here in this country. And all our work was done to address the issue of reliance on institutional care. So what do we do? How do I translate this in very simple, practical words? In countries that rely on orphanages or institutional care as the main solution, or sometimes the only solution available for children, we have, if you can imagine, a one-way street. We have the following sequence of events. We have families at risk who might display certain characteristics, and if you look at the statistics across the world, there are a couple of trends that are the same no matter where we are in this world. So there are families who have an unsustainable source of income. There are families who might experience ill health situations. There are families who lack access to basic services like health, education. There are families who might be isolated from their extended families and their communities. They migrated for economic reasons. They live in areas where they do not even have a friend to call for support. There might be very young families with parents who have very little experience of how to parent and how to deal with certain situations. There are families that might experience intrafamilial conflict. Now, in a system that relies on the use of institutional care, what happens with these families at risk? That's the answer. Nothing. We do have a lack of action, and the risk factors lead in time to a crisis situation. And my God, we know, because we love a crisis, we are always very good at reacting in such a circumstance and recognizing such a context. So we allow the risks to trickle. One change in the environment leads to the family being in a crisis situation, and then we intervene. Or children run away from home. So what are the consequences of our intervention? We remove the children from the family because we deem that that is necessary. The well-being of the child is at risk, and therefore we place the child in an orphanage. The child is being fed, the child is being sent to school, the child is being separated from his or her siblings and the family. What does it happen with the family? Nothing. So we are deciding to use huge amounts of resources to keep children in a system for sometimes very long periods of time, but we are addressing a symptom rather than addressing the root causes of the problem. So for us to be able to ever systematically and systemically address the issue of reliance on orphanages or institutions, what we need is to change this one-way street and replace that area where there is inaction with a system that works both ways. It helps families on that side. It identifies families at risk in a timely manner. It provides them with adequate support. And by the way, all the financial studies that we have available showcase how cost-effective are these interventions, supporting families early on before the separation is becoming an issue. And then on the other hand, we do need to develop a system that provides children with high quality alternative care for those instances when separation is necessary. And by rebuilding this system that goes two ways and has the gatekeeping, as Dr. Kiran Modi was mentioning, the magical word, at the center of it. The gatekeeping is the glue that connects the prevention and family strengthening programs with the alternative care. If we get the gatekeeping right, we will have less children in the formal care system. We will have more children supported at home with less resources and for a shorter period of time. And then we will have enough budget to support those children who really truly need alternative care in the best way possible, in a family-based alternative. Now, it might sound complicated, but I would like to tell you that this is possible. We have data from UNICEF, we have data from our own monitoring and evaluation systems, we have data at global level that tells us that we are on a growing movement to establish deinstitutionalization and completely change the way we think about caring for children. There is evidence that countries in Central, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia made significant progress in reducing the number of children in institutions by significant scales, by over 50% in the past 15 years. And not only that, but they managed to achieve a reduction in the total number of children in care. East and Southern Africa is leading the change of child protection systems in Africa. Countries like Rwanda are literally a second away from seeing the entire orphanage system being replaced by a community-based child protection system which has local foster care, which has special provisions in foster care for children with disabilities, and has seen all the institutions being closed and repurposed in other services, some in schools, some in daycare centers, some in completely different services that serve the broader community. So what I would like to do in the next part of my presentation, and please react or ask or tell me if whatever I'm telling you is way too boring. Please do not fall asleep. I would like to share with you the learnings from this global experience. I am a true believer in never reinventing the wheel. We have created it. Let's use the lessons to avoid repeating the mistakes that we made as an organization starting this work 18 years ago. So I would like to share with you the key lessons that transpire out of the big national successes across the world, which I think will be really useful not only for India but also for the region. So I always like to make a comparison with baking, and it's not because I know how to bake cakes, but I love cakes. Developing a child protection system, it's like baking a cake. And you never know what kind of cake you're going to bake at the end of the day unless you understand who are the children in orphanages, where they are coming from, why they are there, what are the circumstances of their families, what are the weaknesses and the strengths of the communities where they're coming from. And the children will lead you to understand not only how you can transition them successfully from institutions, but they will also help you understand what kind of gatekeeping, what kind of prevention services you need to put in place in your own communities, in your own countries, and broader in the region. Number one lesson learned, never think in short term. All successful governments or NGOs successful in implementing deinstitutionalization had the courage to be ambitious and have long-term vision. You really need to know what you want to achieve at the end of the day, and that could be in 10 years or in 15 years' time. And you need to make sure that everybody around the table that collaborate with you will buy in that vision. Our vision that we share with governments is a country free of orphanages, where all children grow in loving and safe families, either theirs or alternative families. So that kind of vision, the clarity of it, needs to be imparted by everyone. And it can be long-term, because these are things that can be changed overnight. Another critical lesson, please tell the story. People usually are very technical and they want to tell you how they will be doing things. People need to know why before understanding how. And why is what motivates people in engaging in this very long journey. So it's really important, no matter where you work, at government level, at district level, at national level, from an NGO perspective, to actually tell your stakeholders why you're doing what you're doing, and to change the narrative. From saving children to supporting families, from talking about orphans to actually talking about children who might experience risks. Just think about the fact that most of the kids in institutions are not orphans, but we keep using the word, and therefore we keep embedding the story of orphanhood and the child being alone. It's homemade. Do not reinvent the wheel, but absolutely understand the context in which you operate. Please do not copy-paste, but you can develop a framework that helps you understand how to implement a deinstitutionalization strategy in your own area of interest. The context matters. It's really important to understand the reality of separation. What are the key reasons why children are separated? And to understand the dynamic of the institutional system. So rather than agreeing on a blueprint, you can actually agree on a set of principles that will help you drive this work forward. Now, this is usually what I call the poor sister syndrome. You know, our field of child protection and care is usually the smallest department, which has the little power, which is always overwhelmed, and never really given the central position where children should have. For this work to be successful, we need to position child protection and care at the center of a government agenda. And we need to bring on board partners from health, from education, from the finance, the Ministry of Finance, from social protection, to work with us. Because we are the one unifying issue that enables, indeed, a structural reform of the way we care for children. Now, in Zambia, and we have colleagues from Zambia here, 68% of the children in orphanages are placed there before the age of 5 by their own parents to access education. This is not a child protection and care issue, it's an access to education. I just want to strengthen the point that we really need to have these ministries around. Yeah? We have institutions where children are placed because they show signs of malnutrition at early age. Well, I'm sure there are the siblings and the families that experience hardship. So that's not a protection and care issue, it's a nutrition issue which can be addressed through a program ran either through the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Education, depending which one holds the portfolio. And every single one of us know that this work needs to be funded, both in terms of the transition, but also for the sustainability of the services. So without the Ministry of Finance on board, and without them understanding why we do the work that we do and what's the return on investment for them, we will never be able to be successful in the true sense of setting up a sustainable service. It's the hot potato little photo that always reminds me how important it is for us to establish accountabilities. Institutions, orphanages are usually quite a centralized system. They are run by big departments, they have funding from the district or national level, or they are privately funded. Nevertheless, they serve a group of children who come from quite a significant catchment area. So they are centralized. When we deinstitutionalize them, children go back to communities. So what we need is to make sure that resources and capacity follow the children. It is absolutely critical for deinstitutionalization not to be seen as only the transition from institutions to communities. Deinstitutionalization is what happens afterwards. The care, the protection, the support for the children when they return into those communities. Please, let's do it for all children. There are always groups of children who are left behind. And one of the groups is represented by children with special needs. Children with disabilities seems to be always, oh, well, institutions, they're okay for them. We need to make sure that they are at the forefront of the agenda. We always plan for them to begin with, Yes, they will need the longest time of support, they will need the biggest investment. Nevertheless, we need to start with them in mind from the moment of inception. This is quite an important one. Let's not set up revolving doors. If we really want to make a systemic change, what we need is to make sure that we are not, one, beautifying orphanages. Trust me, I've been there. Hope and Homes for Children started by building great orphanages, the best in the world, refurbishing them. It did not work. And the kids told us, you know, what we want is actually to belong to a family, not to this fancy institution. So we should not be doing that because it's a huge waste of resources. And we can use those limited resources that we have with much greater purpose. But second, let's not just talk about reducing the number of children in institutions with the purpose of just reducing the numbers. Because let me tell you a reality. The number of children in institutions is determined by what? By the need in the community or by the number of beds in the institution? Left or right? That's it. So we cannot reduce the number of children in institutions. What we do is we open a door and another door at the back of the institution, and we get the kids in and out. And that is not systemic change. Yes, of course, we can go through a gradual process when it's planned, and that kind of reduction in numbers is actually well thought through, as well as a funding model for that institution. Now, this is the good news and the bad news. You know, this is not a sprint. This is not a short 100 run, everybody's watching it, it's done in few seconds. It is a marathon. And the marathon is long, it's arduous, it's very, very painful, and probably when you're just about to hit the last mile, you feel like, I don't want to do it anymore. But that is when it's the most important, because we do not want to leave any children behind. It's really important for you to have that long-term planning and to be ready for the marathon. But in the same time, I would like to highlight the importance of you being mindful of how children perceive the waiting time. It's so important for us when we plan these processes to always do them with children, for children, and with that in mind, we need to make sure that children do not have to wait long periods of time and they are not supported during that. Can you just imagine how would you feel when you see all your peers moving out and you're still left behind? In one pilot closures that started the reform in Rwanda, we had one little girl, she was 12 years old, she had some learning disabilities and some medical issues, and we needed more time to find an adequate foster family for her. We could not trace her family, and her relatives were not willing or capable of taking care of her. She was desperate, and one day she ran away. We went in overdrive, scattered through the community, looked to find where she was. She was knocking on people's doors, asking if they want to be her family. And she only had to wait for, the whole process was 18 months since the first child or group of children were happily supported to return back into communities. Just always keep this in mind. The other point about the time is also the longer it takes, the more expensive the process is, and the longer the time you have to run two systems in parallel. Always follow the money so you can fundamentally change the way the funding is being allocated for children. Children should never follow the money, but the money should follow the children. And last but not least, on this chapter, measure. Measure your progress. You know, when you're running a marathon, you really need to know, I've done mile 1, 2, and so on and so forth. And for you to know that you're actually implementing that big picture, you need to know what you want to measure and how to do it. So you know at any one time you are on the right track. And my very simple suggestion is to use the framework that the UN Guidelines on Alternative Care provide us with measuring how we implement the principle of necessity and the principle of suitability. And we do have one tool. We have the tracking tool that is now available. It's online. There is guidance and support for governments or NGOs who want to support governments to implement the tracking tool. So there is an understanding, where is the baseline? Where do you start in this journey? I would like to conclude with a couple of ideas, and I hope I did not go way above the time allocated. We really want to influence change. And the reflection that I was helped to have with working in partnership with New Philanthropy Capital, we looked at how theories of change are being developed and applied to system strengthening and change. And we came up with 5 rules of thumb. For one to be able to influence change, you need to understand the context. And you are the experts. You're part of the context. To know yourself, to know what are your capacities, your superpowers, and use a very asset-based way to assess your ability to contribute to the system. 3, you need to think systematically and systemically. You need to have that big picture in mind. And sometimes it's hard, especially when you work at the grassroots level. It's really important to be able to take that step back and to look at the big picture. Learn and adapt. And that's why measurement is so important. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we can improve and strive from excellence with every single step that we take. And last but not least, we need to recognize that change is personal. People will come not only with their minds and very technical, non-emotional brain, but they will be very involved with their emotions. And people might come from different points. You need to value and appreciate that. All in all, across all the environments in which we operated, we identified 4 critical areas in which one needs to work concurrently and systematically to influence systemic change for children. 1, we need to have political will. Where there is political will, things will happen. And what we need is to translate that political will into white papers, into policy papers, into positions and national strategies and action plans. So it stays, irrespective of the political change in the country, we have a unifying red thread. And I want to tell you that the change we helped influence in Romania, where we helped 90% of the children to return into communities, where we developed a completely new child protection system with 14,000 kids in foster care from 0. We changed 11 governments since we started. Nevertheless, we translated that political will in a strategy that provided that continuation irrespective of the political color of the government that was in charge. Second, we need to establish the know-how in the countries in which we want to influence change. It's great for you to hear from Romania, from Rwanda, from Moldova, Ukraine, Belarus, and other countries that have been through the change. What you want is to pilot the change, even at small scale, in your country, in your region, in your community. Because not only that you're going to build the evidence, but you're going to build the confidence and the story that you want to tell. Last but not least, we really need our civil society to work together cooperatively both to assist and support the government as well as to inspire the communities for this change. And of course, all roads lead to Rome and to resources. We do need financial resources. And we need finance to be able to fund the transition between the status quo, the reliance on orphanages, to a new system that will deliver much more for the investment that we put in. There are loads of donors, bilateral donors, and other private institutions who are truly vested in supporting this transition. So there are some good news on this side. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Modi, you need to be on the dais. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Delia. Thank you so much. At least I know, and I'm sure we all know now, that we have to bake a cake. And I'm sure we all now agree we are part of a marathon. So with those words, I thank Dr. Delia Pop, and I'll call upon Ms. Kendra Gregson to share her thoughts on the situation of alternative care, particularly in South Asia. As we all know, as in most of us who were at the second BICON know, Kendra was with us also for the second one. She is the Child Protection Regional Advisor for UNICEF Regional Office for South Asia, based in Kathmandu, Nepal. And her detailed bio can be found on page 25 of the brochure. I'm not reading out to save time. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Secretary, distinguished panelists, friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here at this important event, and I thank Uday and Care greatly for welcoming UNICEF to the opening panel of this important meeting. It is an opportunity here with all of us, and I'm so surprised how many people I know from the last meeting, to share our common understanding about how to strengthen families and build better futures so that children, all children, as Delia noted, are protected and reach their full potential. It is also special for me to be on a panel with Delia. Delia and I met in early 2000, the late 1990s, in a small village called Travnik in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where we were both working on alternative care from different angles. It is a small world. It's also my challenge to be able to respond to Delia's presentation from a sort of a comprehensive presentation from a South Asia perspective. However, I hope that, and I expect throughout the whole conference, or the whole 2 days, we will continue to reflect on that presentation and deepen it. Human rights are essential to our lives as human beings. And when we think about child protection systems, when we think about alternative care, we must think about rights. Basic standards without which people cannot survive and thrive with dignity. 70 years ago this year, 70 years ago, the United Nations set a common standard on human rights with the adoption of the Universal Declaration. It was accepted by all countries and gives acknowledgement to the fundamental principle that all human beings, male, female, weak, strong, rich, poor, young, old, all races and religions, those who live in families, in care, on the street, wherever, are to be treated with dignity and respect. 70 years ago, that declaration also laid the groundwork to strengthen child rights by stressing that children are entitled to special care and protection. In the 1989, the Convention on the Rights of the Child affords that every child has the right to a standard of living adequate for the child's physical, mental, spiritual, moral, and social development. And it states that parents, legal guardians, have the responsibility for the upbringing and development of the child. However, as Delia noted, there are conditions under which families find themselves unable to fulfill these obligations. And this loss of parental care may result in the child having to live in alternative care arrangements. But these are to be temporary arrangements until a stable solution is found. And in South Asia, as we all know, the form of care that is most dominant is often institutional care. And research has shown and provided strong and consistent evidence indicating that in nearly all domains, institutional care profoundly negatively affects children's experiences, with impacts ranging from impaired social and interpersonal development to delayed cognitive and language development. So these are places which don't meet with the basic rights criteria for a standard of living for children. Delia has provided us with a good overview of where we stand globally and our understanding of alternative care. Our understanding of care has changed. And I think Hopes and Homes is a good example of how, even organizationally, we've changed our thinking about what good care means. One of the things I found interesting, of many things in Delia's presentation, is that the focus on systems, child protection systems. We need to think about all children. We need to think about children before they're in alternative care, while they're in alternative care, and after they're in alternative care. We need to think about the whole system. And we need to make sure that that is strong and effective to be able to make the alternative care part of that strong and effective. And in South Asia, all countries are working on strengthening their child protection system to one that is respectful of human rights. But we are at the beginning. We're at the beginning of this, and we face many challenges which we can build on. And I just want to reflect on a few of those challenges, picking up on a few areas that Delia mentioned as part of a system. In terms of measurement, in South Asia, we do not know how many children are in the care system. Not only alternative care, but generally, we don't know how many children there are. We have a recent study showed that about 15 out of every 100,000 children are in residential institutional care. However, we suspect that that is mostly public care, government care. And most of the care in South Asia is not government public. It is with faith-based organizations, NGOs. We also have types of care which are, I'm going to say, on the boundaries. It's hard to say, are they alternative care or not? We think of the monasteries in Bhutan, or we think of I think they're called hostels in India in the tribal areas. So this is also contributing to not necessarily knowing the numbers. We have to know where the children are. There are countries that are working on addressing this. Sri Lanka, I know we have representatives from Sri Lanka here, is one country in the region which is looking at tracking both foster care and residential care. So that's great. We have some progress. In Maldives, I don't know if anyone here is from the Maldives, but they started to establish a case management system which crosses institutions. So it looks at the police, the interior, and the social sectors. So it crosses the institutions to start to, which may develop into like an information management tool so we know where the children are. Not having data also suggests to me that the legal placement of children is not being implemented effectively. Placement in care, so taking away a child from the family to place them in care, requires a legal decision. And if there was a legal decision, we would be able to know some of the numbers. It could be easily tracked. But in many countries, care is not justified in that way. So in Pakistan, it's often connected with street children. So children are placed in care under vagrancy laws, not under an alternative care law. In Bangladesh, we have children placed there under the marriage legislation law. Again, not under the alternative care laws. not only do we need the laws, but we also need the support from the courts to be able to effectively implement any of this legislation. And again, we have some good examples in the region. Nepal is working on standards, working on implementation of secondary legislation on standards for residential care. And they're also working, the government is working, we have people from Nepal here, I know that, I saw some. We also have people, NGOs, working with the government, which are helping monitor those standards. And institutions are actually being closed. Delia was telling me about a program they're also going to be working on, which is hopefully going to speed that up a little bit more. And in India, as another example, we have some examples of working with the judiciary, and particularly with the Supreme Court, so that the judges understand the alternative care and all of these options so that they can effectively, well, recognize what the implementation of that legislation means. South Asia overall is prone to emergency situations. Natural disasters happen everywhere all the time in South Asia, whether it's floods, whether it's earthquakes, whether it's monsoons. It's ongoing, and during such times, children may be separated from their families, and they may be separated immediately. But there is also secondary separation, where because of the emergency, the family feels that they need to put the child in care because at that time they cannot care for them. In the first instance, so on the separation, we need to first focus on reunification, tracing and reunification. On the second part, where families feel that they need to put the child in care because of their situation, we need to respond differently and say, what do you need to be able to support the family staying together? However, there's a third type of separation that happens during emergencies, and I'm going to say it's involuntary separation. And a good example of that is the recent earthquake, or 2015 earthquake in Nepal. Was a great example of where well-wishers and faith-based groups assume that children who were in the earthquake area should not be there. They should be elsewhere. They should be in school. There's no schools. The schools fell down. They should be elsewhere. So they rushed to these, the 15 earthquake-affected districts and took the children. They picked them up, thinking they should be elsewhere. They were faith-based groups, NGOs. Some of them were in Nepal, but they were moving into Nepal. Some of them crossed borders. They crossed into India. There was quite a big move into India. But this was also a good example where the government came in to try and stop this and worked with the transportation sector to monitor that illicit movement of children and to really put in controls so that that movement wouldn't happen. As Delia mentioned, all roads eventually lead to resources. It's not only about the will to do something, but it's actually about having the resources to do this. We have also some good examples of developments in alternative care and the strengthening of the social service workforce. With many degree programs across all the countries, and Bhutan is the latest example of them just developing a master's program on social work. We also have an issue of resources, of financial resources. As Delia said, the child should not follow the money should follow the child. And the first aspect of that is finding out where the money is right now. Afghanistan just completed a review of the public finances for child protection and found that for every $100 spent by the government, $8 was for child protection. That is a huge amount, right? For 8% of your budget is for child protection, that's huge. That's the largest that we've found globally. However, when we're looking at the Afghanistan budget, there isn't much money there. And what was interesting, or what I found interesting in that, the response from the government to the study was to increase that ratio even more. And so the planned budget for 2018 is even greater than 8%, and most of that is on prevention. We have some challenges: lack of data, legislation and its implementation, risk of emergencies, and the importance of strengthening the overall system with resources, with resources. And yet, across the region, we have some great examples to draw on to accelerate progress to ensure that alternative care is only used when it is necessary, and when it is used, to make sure it is the most suitable care for the child. We are here to start a journey for the next 2 days, and I expect we will share experiences, progress, consolidate our learnings about the challenges and advances. I expect that there will be some discussions that will be challenging, that will be difficult as we tackle standards, as we tackle the struggles faced by the caregivers and children in deinstitutionalization. And as we tackle how do we make the decision on the right form of care. I'm honored to be part of this discussion. I'm really looking forward to having those debates between our leaders and our thinkers and our practitioners working to champion the children's right to a standard of living adequate for the child's physical, mental, spiritual, moral, and social development. So I look forward to engaging with you over the next 2 days to find common solutions to uphold human rights for children everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kendra. Indeed, childcare is dynamic, and thank you for flagging the key challenges in alternative care for South Asia. I'll now quickly request Shireen, who heads the policy and advocacy team at Tata Trusts, to share a few words with us. And Shireen, can I request you to be a bit brief and quick?
I wasn't expecting it. I thought I'd have the last 2 minutes. But I'm very, very happy to be here. And I was thinking back, to about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, when before the first Biocon, and Kiran had written to me at the time when I was at Save the Children about this. And I had actually been to Dayan Care before, because when I came back to India after about 10 years of being in the UK with Save the Children UK, I was looking, we were very much along the lines of the fact that no children should be in an institution, and children should be in families. And in fact, Save the Children had worked in Eastern Europe just before I'd returned. So this was very much in my mind. This is the policy, no question about it. We can't be having this kind of terrible homes or Dickensian situation. And then I went around the country from West Bengal to Kashmir, and saw that there were definitely large number of children who should not be in homes, because mostly it was poverty or education, etc. But there were also a significant number who needed that care, who, if they weren't in institutions, would be on the streets in much worse situations, who would be exploited in terrible ways. Young girls who had already been trafficked or abused, or in situations, even if it was in homes as domestic workers, but they didn't have the support from the family. And if they weren't in institutions or some form, where would they go? And then I set about looking at, okay, are there places that actually provide this. What does alternate care mean in a situation like India, where we have millions, and who are in need of that care? And of course, are there people who are already doing it, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, etc. So, we're kind of asked around, and I actually went to the Anke. I don't think Kiran even knew that I had gone there, and other places. And I was very impressed with what I saw, and I realize now that it is the result of, the sort of hard work and dedication and commitment of Kiran. So I'd really like to thank you for that, and really impressed by the fact that conference, when it was first suggested, and I think I talked about UNICEF, I talked about going to the government, and Kiran was like, government? I don't know what, where to go and what to do and how to do. And now it's come to this every 2 years, and really great to have this, because those standards of care and what we call care, and I think when Delia reminded us to close our eyes and think about what that was, that is really absent, even if it is a well-functioning home that is clean, has food, is hygienic. Many of them don't even have this. But that missing element, I had a young man the other day, and I was very happy to know that, because many times it's women who are in this sector, though, I'm glad to see many ex-Save the Children, now UNICEF, male colleagues who are in the sector, but who was telling me about homes that they work in. Rizwan from Make a Difference, who many of you may know, and actually he discounted the substantial impact they've had on education. So 90% of the children from those homes have passed, 12th in university. Of them, a very large percentage had first-class degrees, etc. But they still didn't do well in life, or they didn't, kind of have the success, other kinds of things that all of us have. And what those differences were in terms of actual care, that is so hard to define, and of course, unfortunately, so hard to position to funders. So I think it's really important that we are here today and are documenting that practice and those standards, because I think that evidence and know-how is critical. From one of the big gaps that we have is, when we heard about Delia saying knowing who it is, we don't really know. And Mr. Srivastav, sir, I would really make an urgent request that we don't know the number of institutions that we have. I keep asking people, and someone said to me the other day, he's filed many RTIs. He gets responses like 1,020 from the state of Maharashtra, and then at the national level, 1,030. So we don't know the numbers, and if we don't know those numbers, then we don't know who the children are and what we can do. So I think that as a starting point is really, really critical, and we would look to the government to do that and have that data. And obviously, as groups in our capacity, we would support it in any way that we can. And the other issue is budget. We spend 0.05% on child protection. This year, surprisingly, ICPS seems to be merged under ICDS, which I don't know why, and what that means, that is there even less significance as an organization that is firmly behind nutrition. It's not that the others are less important, but I was thinking as you spoke that one of the things I want to do is bring the importance of child protection to a big organization. I haven't said anything about the Tata Trust, but doesn't matter. But health and education are large areas of our work, have been for the last 125 years. We do actually support childcare institutions, which is how I got my inroad to bring this up a little bit more critically and strategically in any small way that we possibly can. But budget is a real issue. So it means that we spend 5 paisa of every 100 rupees on protection overall. And we have huge issues, unfortunately, of violence, abuse, trafficking. Child marriage has seen a drop, which is really good and shows that with attention, with, of course, some political will and everything else behind it, we can do something. So I've used up, I don't know, more time than I don't know how much time I was given. But thank you very much and look very much forward to seeing the outcomes and taking it forward.
Thank you, Shireen ma'am. UNICEF, I must say, has been with us not only financially but a huge knowledge partner for the last 3 conferences. I'll now call upon, we're really happy that we have the country representative, India UNICEF, Ms. Yasmin Ali Haq, to share a few words with us. You'll find ma'am's full bio on page 33 of the conference brochure.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I think after the brilliant presentation we had from Dr. Pope, which looked at, it evoked our thinking, our heart, and our gut when you presented it in that way. And it's really how do we bring body, heart, and soul together for children who find themselves in situations of either unsafe family situation at risk of being institutionalized, and those who have been in institutions for many years. I would like to briefly touch on 3 domains which are partly you have touched upon, the speakers have touched upon, but also some which I hope you will be exploring further as you move forward in the deliberations. One is, the whole issue of community-based rehabilitation. And I was struck during a visit to Chhattisgarh when I met the girls from Beti Zindabad Bakery. A small NGO really driven by the passion of one person who has now been acknowledged nationally, receiving the Rashtrapati Award recently. But really how through working with girls who have been rescued from being trafficked either for marriage or for sexual work, and then for them to come back and find a meaningful way of contributing to their society and reintegrating into their communities and families. And I think this is a core challenge we face in all programs where we're trying to reintegrate children, bring them back to the community, bring them back to what the normal should be, whether it's in their own home or in an alternative arrangement with another family, with their own family. And it's really important that we find these gems around. And how do you take something like that to scale in a country like India? You lose the attention and the focus when you want to put it into a formula and take it to scale. But really the solution probably is to pick up on all the different nuggets that we have throughout the country, the small community-based organizations. And I think this is where a conference like this really brings together a mapping of what capacity, what passion, what commitment is out there. But then how do we connect them? How do we support them in getting strength from each other? And also how do we support them in sharing their experiences and not have to reinvent the wheel every time? Because it was clear that they can't be in isolation. They have to be linked to the local structures, the power bases, the police, the judiciary, the social welfare departments. They do have to be linked with, but how do you do it? How can you learn lessons of what worked and what didn't work? Because people who do this, people who do rescue children are themselves at risk. They do face threats. They do face stigma at times. So it's really important that we not just concentrate on the criminal side of it, but also the reintegration side of it. The story doesn't end by the child being rescued. In a way, that's the beginning of the future for the child. And how can we work together to make that as easy as possible? How do we not see institutionalization as a solution to children being rescued? What are the safe spaces? And really looking at the further options of family and community-based care. Also, within the family environment, they're not always safe. Given the fact that I think in all our countries here, domestic violence is definitely an issue. In many places, alcohol abuse is an issue. And that, again, acts as another threat. So how do we promote more and more family and community-based rehabilitation as models, but also as true safe spaces for the children? The second area I'd like to focus on is that of protecting children from violence and abuse in childcare institutions. And you know, like Delia, you were saying that it's not going to happen overnight. And it is going to take that long-term vision. So firstly, do we have that roadmap? Do we have that long-term vision? Have we bought into the vision? But importantly, as we move forward, how do we still continue to focus on the children who are in institutions and not pretend that they're not there? There are standards and guidelines that governments have developed. How do we assess these child care, whether it's an educational boarding school or a protection home? How do we assess them? How do we bring in an independent oversight mechanism? Where is the accountability for children being safe in these institutions that are even the registered ones? And then how do we work with children? And I like the way you talked about it, Delia. You said that even the children are telling us it's not working. And do we listen to children? Do we take their view into it? You know, what are the kids saying? And that's really, they are the core of it, but we do also need to have their view and their participation in decisions of options that they could have. So how can we equip them with the skills and knowledge to support safe reporting of abuse, and also in what alternatives would be available to them? Finally, I'd just like to focus briefly on strengthening family care arrangements. And you know, it's probably the most difficult one. How do you empower a family to really take care of their child in a way that a child has a right to? How do we address some of the stresses and tensions within the families that lead to children being abused and exploited? How do we look at systems that protect children, not just the criminal and justice systems, but also the social protection mechanisms? And here again, if we look at the various schemes that are available in India, we have the example of the Palanhar scheme in Rajasthan, which reaches 215,000 plus children with cash assistance to families who are vulnerable. In Maharashtra, we have the Bal Sangopan Yojana, which covers 17,000 children plus, and really helps some schemes that help children of migrant families, especially seasonal migration related to work. Then we have the Palak Mata Pita in Gujarat, which reaches over 5,000 children. So we do have schemes, social protective schemes, and how can we learn from them what we have homegrown within the countries, but also examples globally that we know are showing good results. Like you mentioned, the child grant support and foster grant in South Africa. We're hearing about what's happening in Rwanda. The Bolsa Familia in Brazil is an example we are all familiar with. And so it's really important that these schemes are not seen as just cash delivery, but it always has to be cash plus. It's about having the cash plus access to services, plus access to support when needed, plus access to redressal, especially when that is needed. So I think those are the three key issues that I'd like to flag. I know I've raised more questions, and I hope that in your deliberations you will look into these two. But definitely to assure everyone that we remain committed to this issue. It's one of the key child protective system issues that we need to be grappling with together, and it's really the initiative of the small initiatives that are dotted around the world that we can connect better, and this is just such a wonderful example. So thank you to Diane for bringing it together. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for reminding that we need to put the heart, soul, and mind into this work. I'll now call upon the representative from the Government of India, Sri Rakesh Srivastava, who is the Secretary at the Ministry of Women and Child, Government of India, to share a few words.
Thank you. Dr. Kiran Modi, Dr. Delia Paul, Ms. Gregson, Ms. Shireen Vakil, Dr. Yasmin Ali Haq, representatives from various South Asian countries, ladies and gentlemen, it is a matter of great pleasure for me to be part of this august gathering assembled here to deliberate upon evolving trends in alternative and family strengthening for children across the Asian countries. It is indeed a great opportunity for me and for us to come here today on a common platform to share our experiences as well as our concerns regarding the very important issue of alternative care and family strengthening, an issue with which we all agree requires much more focused attention than it is getting as of now. We know that children experience their world as an environment of relationships, and these relationships affect virtually all aspects of their development: intellectual, social, emotional, physical, behavioral, and moral. The quality and stability of a child's relationships in the early years lay the foundation for a wide range of later developmental outcomes that really matter, such as self-confidence, sound mental health, motivation to learn, and achievement in school and later on in life. Here, hence, the importance of providing a caring environment and strengthening the family life for all the children has been strongly endorsed in the Constitution of India as well as the United Nations Convention on Child Rights. India is a young nation with a child population of more than 472 million as per the 2011 census. This forms approximately 40% of the total population of the country. Despite our best efforts, children often face multiple vulnerabilities in the form of abuse, exploitation, and neglect. Often they are forced into conditions where they are deprived of family care and support due to internal and external factors. The internal factors arising from within the close confinement of family include abuse, including sexual abuse, domestic violence, exploitation, neglect, as well as weakening family ties and communications. The external factors which arise from broader socio-economic vulnerabilities such as socio-economic distress, migration, displacement, and natural disasters also often force children to be separated from their families. Thus, it is our earnest duty to not only to protect them from these conditions but also to strengthen the families so that they are able to take care of their children. However, for those children who cannot be nurtured in their own families, we owe it to them to ensure a family-like, loving and caring environment. In this context, I may add that in our country, foster care has not proved to be very popular. And what we are normally seeing is that the children go in for adoption, and for which we have the Juvenile Justice Act. And under the Juvenile Justice Act, we have a number of schemes which are collectively known as the ICPS, the Integrated Child Protection Scheme. These schemes help to implement the Juvenile Justice Act, and various amendments have been proposed to the Juvenile Justice Act. These are in the process of being formalized, and thereafter we will be moving it to the competent authority for making the necessary amendments. One of the major changes that we have made in the ICPS is that the increase in the reimbursement that was given for the sitting fees of the Child Welfare Committee members and also the members of the Juvenile Justice Board, as well as the per child allocation in the child care institutions. I can assure Shireen that the ICPS, the total budget that we have for this year, that this year means 2017-18, is 6,480 million rupees, and it has not been merged with the ICDS, and in the ministry there are two separate verticals, and there is no question of merging one with the other. In fact, it is not even possible because the two are totally different budget heads and they are addressing two different type of clientele. I may also tell that the number of, you had inquired about the number of child care institutions that are registered in the country. So we have carried out an extensive survey with the help of state governments, and the total number of child care institutions that have been registered as on 31st December 2017 stood at 6,871. There is one state, however, which has in which the child care institutions there have taken the plea that they are not child care institutions, rather they are hostels, and therefore they don't need to be brought under the discipline and purview of the Juvenile Justice Act. They have also got a stay order from their own High Court, but we have challenged it in the Supreme Court and we are confident of winning the case, and thereafter those institutions that assume that they are only hostels and they are not child care institutions will also have to get themselves registered. Once they are registered, I believe that the total number of child care institutions in this country will be in the vicinity of around 9,000. But 6,871 of them are registered and they are available state-wise. So if any RTI query is made, I think they will get a very satisfactory answer. Another change that we are proposing in the Juvenile Justice Act, which deals with adoption, is that we are relieving the family courts of the administrative job of giving that order, the last mile order that is given before a child is placed into adoption, that we are shifting from the family courts to the district collectors and the district magistrates, because the district magistrate is the head of the district child protection unit in any case. He has all the records, and I think there is a lot of time that is taken up in the courts. I think that can be saved. The law prescribes a 2-month period within which the certificate of adoption has to be issued by the court. Our experience here is that it is taking more than 2 years. So once it is given to the district magistrates, we are confident that we will be able to issue the certificate for adoption within the period of 2 months, which is the statutory limit. Then we have another institution which is involved in the protection and in the for the safety of children, that is the Child Care India Foundation. It is an NGO which works very closely with the ministry, and in 1 year they have received more than 13 million distress calls. Now, not all of them are actionable, many of them are not actionable, but those calls which are actionable are acted upon within 1 hour, and within 1 hour the child is given protection and he is provided a safe place where he can be given shelter till such time as he is reunited with his family or rehabilitated. Another point that was raised by the previous speakers was, I think Ms. Gregson raised it, was what the ministry is doing with the courts. So I am happy to inform this gathering that in this country, the Honorable Supreme Court is working in very close cooperation with our ministry and is providing an oversight into all the workings of the Juvenile Justice Act. And the honorable judges, in spite of their busy schedule, they are finding time to visit the states, to have meetings with the juvenile justice boards and with the ministry officials and with the state government officials, not only of that state but of the other states, and they are in the process of further fine-tuning and giving directions on what to do to improve the lot of the children who are staying in those child care institutions. This cooperation with the Supreme Court, I may add, does not limit itself only to the child care institutions. They are also looking into the aspects of the widows' homes. For example, the one that we are in the process, we have already constructed in Vrindavan, and which is now at the stage of inauguration. It will be the largest widows' home in the country. It can house 1,000 widows. We are going to make a similar widows' home in Varanasi and then one more in Gaya. So all these widows' homes, the entire administration, how it will be run, what will be the prescribed structure of administration there, who will look after the board and lodging, all these issues, they are being looked into by the Supreme Court in great detail. So I may assure the gathering here that the Supreme Court of this country is very deeply involved in the welfare of children in the child care institutions. And what is a matter of concern for us, however, is the fact that our adoptions have not progressed in the manner in which we would have wanted them to progress. You see, the number of prospective adoptive parents, the list is very long. We have about 14,000 prospective adoptive parents who are waiting for children, but the number of children whom we can offer is only about 900. So the waiting period for the adoptive parents is 2 years, which I think is too long, and by that time many of the parents, they lose hope, and it is not a very good situation. We are looking into this. We are trying to see how we can further enhance the number of children who we can give for adoption. In our country, the adoption, I think the process, after 5 years it becomes very difficult for a child to get adopted. So we want that the initial 2 or 3 years of the child, when he is in the CCI, the child care institution, then he should be in a position, or rather we should be in a position to place him in a home where he can get care and affection. Then as a percentage of GDP, a mention was made, as a percentage of GDP, the Women and Child Ministry gets 0.186% of the GDP of the country. So that is insofar as the statistics is concerned. Now, I have already shared in detail the working of the Juvenile Justice Act. This act also empowers the child welfare committees to take decision on whether a child should be restored to the family or placed in a children's home or fit facility or specialized adoption agency with a fit person, provided foster care or sponsorship provided, and the child is to be provided with foster care and sponsorship. The Chapter 6 of the Act defines the process and procedures for rehabilitation and social reintegration of the child, which align with the principles laid down in the guidelines, and also defines provisions of aftercare. The Act also spells out stringent measures for monitoring, supervision and evaluation of child care institutions and the standards of care provided therein. The Ministry of Women and Child Development has issued detailed guidelines for foster care, sponsorship and aftercare, and provisions are made for the same under Child Protection Services scheme. However, we understand these need to be further revised and updated. So these are as far as the legal provisions are concerned, but as I had stated earlier, in our country we find that sponsorship and foster care is not very popular, and basically we go in for adoptions only. And for adoptions we have the CARA, that Central Adoption Resource Agency, which we are in the process of improving the facilities and the procedures so that more children can be placed into the adoption net. We are also focusing on deinstitutionalization by strengthening of the sponsorship component under Child Protection Service scheme. It is a conditional assistance to strengthen the families of vulnerable children to meet medical, nutritional, educational and other needs of the children. Here I would like to quote Nelson Mandela ji, that safety and security don't just happen, they are the result of collective consensus and public investment. We owe our children, the most vulnerable citizens in our society, a life free of violence and fear. I hear since many representatives from South Asian countries are also attending this conference, I would like to just point out that slight deviation of the topic of discussion is that we have got the anti-human trafficking bill cleared by our union cabinet, and currently it is with the parliament, and we are confident that in the current session of the parliament this bill will be converted into the act. So once it is done, it will be a very major step forward to check the anti-human trafficking activities that go on in this region, not only in this country but in this entire region. The example of Best Bakery was highlighted by Yasmin. I would like to say that recently on the 8th of March, which is the International Women's Day, we have honored the Best Bakery with the Nari Shakti Puraskar. The Nari Shakti is the equivalent of in the ministry of the Padma Shri, and therefore we assign a very high priority to it. And we hope that by suitably recognizing and espousing the cause of such institutions and NGOs, we will give a boost to these activities in the country. Before I conclude, I would like to congratulate Udyan Care for creating a platform to deliberate upon the issues of alternative care for children. I request you all to share your views and suggestions, keeping the best interests of the child in mind. I hope that the deliberations on the 2 days conference will help us in developing better policies and programs for alternative care and family strengthening in our respective countries. Let us take this pledge to commit ourselves to the most noble cause of providing safe and secure environment to our children. Thank you.